everyone. Thank you for being here, and I want to thank the SAFETY4SEA team and Mr. Balokas for organizing us an excellent event. I think very good conversation so far, and very timely conversations, especially with what we're seeing, what's unfolding at the moment in many areas of the world, and particularly in the Middle East crisis. From our side of things, at Diaplous we are risk managers, right? Since 2010, we're operating where geopolitical friction meets the physical reality of shipping. I'm going to take things, see things, preparing the crew resilience from a different perspective, right? Very often we're talking about protecting the vessel, protecting the cargo, etc., etc. At the moment, we want to shift it a little bit beyond the hull, and the physical reality that has the impact of the seafarers. The images, we know AI is doing amazing things, creating pictures, etc. Unfortunately, these pictures are not AI. They're some of the many, many pictures we're receiving every single day from the industry, right? From the crisis at the moment in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz and the Arabian Sea and the Arabian Gulf. We've seen one of the most expensive choke points at the moment, with hundreds and hundreds of vessels being stuck. The whole maritime market is feeling the impact. The consumers are also going to feel the impact in a little bit. And we often talked about ships, right? Hundreds and hundreds of ships, but how many seafarers actually are stuck in the situation as well? The current reality is going to be, it's changing dramatically. We've seen, these are pictures and videos of what actually the seafarers are watching from their vessels. They have no idea what's happening. Uncertainty is a big factor about what they see and what they're feeling, right? When they're stuck inside a vessel that has been there for any reason, right, commercial or operational, and they have no idea, why the vessel next to them is in flames, etc. And if they can actually go and operate, and what's going to have an attempt for them. We've seen vessels being struck from the 11th and 12th of March onwards. We've seen attacks happening on commercial shipping as a target, not just by collateral damage. And we've seen, unfortunately, even the attempt from a tugboat that tried to rescue one of the vessels being attacked, and seeing, unfortunately, some fatalities there as well. So the reality is that, the psychological terror is absolute, and it's a reality. And of course, this is the toll that we see, right? These are numbers that we see from the industry. These are numbers from 2025, actually. So I'm pretty sure those numbers might be a little bit worse today. But we see 30% of the maritime workers show symptoms of anxiety, right? We see the impact and psychological burden that how this translates into operational difficulties and operational hazards. We see that, a very shocking numbers that 20% of seafarers also report some ideation of suicide, which is not good. And that 11% of all deaths are actually also relating to suicide in the shipping industry. So, the psychological burden, we see how that translates now in operational risk, right? A terrified or exhausted crew cannot sleep. Already we see that 33% of the seafarers working on cargo ships are lacking of sleep and not getting the proper rest. This number is approximate from what we're trying to get, but also it's from studies that 75 to 96% of all marine accidents are also caused by human error, right? Lack of sleep also has a direct impact. It's not so difficult to see that as well. And this as well has a financial implication, with more than 540 million annually being lost by human error, basically. So fatigue is definitely a systemic hazard and has operational implications. And it's not only a mind issue, right? It's chronic fear and stress definitely has an impact on the body as well. There's no coincidence that from the graph that we see as well that, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal and severe fatigue issues are one of the top illnesses that we see in the industry as well. And we see as well that, 60% of also the deaths that we see of the crew that have heart-related issues. So crew health is not just a welfare concern, has an operational factor as well. Now let's just put in perspective a theoretical scenario that might have a real impact. Already medical evacuations pose a huge operational challenge. What happens if a vessel now is stuck in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz in the Arabian Gulf? and there's a crewfarer going up to the master saying, you know, my chest is tight, and we have the need for a medical evacuation. In a critical zone as well, this is going to be a complete operational nightmare. So the question is, you know, with drones, with GPS jamming, with airspace closures, how do you manage situations like that? Quite difficult. We talked about the problems, right? I think from our perspective, it's also to see, okay, what the industry can do. Is there anything that we can do? Unfortunately, shipping, and one unfortunate reality of shipping is that it's a quite reactive industry. I think the industry has to move away from this reaction and go to a more predictive stage. How to do that, right? You cannot talk anymore quite separately between security issues and safety and health issues. You know, this cannot be two different departments, two different topics. How can we provide, you know, a holistic solutions, some measures in order to help the seafarers of the problems of today, right? And by the way, these are not theoretical things. They're tools and effective tools that are already being used and we can use today. Predictive security, right? 24/7 intelligence, monitoring of anomalies, watchkeeping from remotely to be able to stay on top of geopolitical situation and try to prevent incidents. You know, reroute vessels when we see attacks and try to predict from a vessel having a threat that is materializing. You know, it will make a big impact, and it makes a big impact to every seafarer when they know that the company is taking every single step that they can take in order to keep them safe. At the moment, especially with the Strait of Hormuz, we are seeing this from the industry. We're already talking to quite a few companies, and with coordination with the office, we speak to the crew members at live calls to try to explain to them the situation, you know, try to break down all the risks for them when they're seeing the impact of the war left and right, and try to explain to them that somebody's over there looking over them, and we're going to try to operate as safely as possible in this uncertain scenario. So the psychological relief is intense, is immense in those cases. So we can remove the fear of the unknown. It makes a big impact for the seafarers. On the health perspective, there's also quite a few solutions, right? There's many things that we can do, especially as technology and connectivity is improving every single year in the industry. You know, we have already been deployed, you know, whenever with the current situation, right, we have vessels getting stuck in places we cannot access very easily. If you cannot take the people to the hospital, you have to bring the hospital to the vessel, right? And at the moment, we do have solutions in the industry. We ourselves as well have internal in-house tools that we send quality equipment that we can do laboratory tests on board the vessel very easily with a prick of blood to measure about troponin, D-dimer, and make sure that, you know, any heart attacks, and have full laboratory level quality tests anywhere in the world, right? So taking this risk as well out of the equation. Of course, and unfortunately in shipping, you know, taking all the actions is not just a theoretical step. It has to have a financial impact. But thankfully, all these steps has a big influence as well. You know, any evacuation that you can avoid, any rerouting that you have to do, it has a big financial impact. So there is definitely an ROI for all these cases. And to close off, I think, you know, it's, from our perspective, we can talk about also the crisis in the Middle East. We have been doing this for, you know, countless of hours the past 2 weeks with our clients. We're not going to do that, and that's not the point of the conversation. The reality is that shipping now has entered a new phase. You know, especially the last 3 years, we've seen how shipping now very easily can be used as a tool to push political agendas. So the question is whether we lay up all the vessels and we don't do any operations, or we develop the tools, right? We enable our seafarers and the resilience of the workforce in order to be able to navigate all those risks. So proper intelligence, proper measures, staying ahead of the curve, and leave this reactive mindset and go to this proactive step is going to be the solution going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.